Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
This judge has given me a gag order and said you'll go to jail if you violate it. And frankly, you know what? Our Constitution is much more important than jail. It's not even close. I'll do that sacrifice any day.
Well, there's Donald Trump as the circus in New York City continues. Welcome into Wake Up Missouri on this, I guess, a little respite in the stormy time that we're living this week. Storms all day yesterday and overnight and today, and we got a respite tomorrow. It's going to be up. Well, there's a lot of storms going on at the state level, at the local level, at the national level, the international level. We'll be covering it all with Stephanie and producer Hannah and John Marsh and Brian Hauswirth. Thanks for being here. 573-874-9390 is our number if you want to weigh in on the topics of the day. Stephanie, good to see you. Did your house and humble abode all good? Everything safe?
Good morning. Yes. No, I was just reveling because my kids have reached the age where like they just slept through it all.
Oh.
And usually we're up all night and they're like, you know, my girls don't love the storms and they woke me up for sure.
Yeah.
But my girls apparently were knocked out for the night, which was nice.
Lots of windy weather. I know they had tornado warnings to our east. We'll be talking with Chris Arps and see how he's doing at 8:08 rather than the usual time.
Yeah,
8:08.
You did hear that correctly.
8:08. So those of you who are 6:35ers for Chris, he's got something else going on this morning. He'll be with us at 8:08. And we're going to be talking to an insider as well on at 7:35, right?
7:10.
7:10 on what happened at the state convention on Saturday. I saw the release from the the GOP leader here in the party leader in the state, right?
Yeah, Nick Myers.
And nothing really happened. There wasn't a platform after there was a draft platform and whatever.
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of reporting on that, and I don't know that there was a lot of media present, but Camellia Peterson, who folks will know does a lot of grassroots organizing for Americans for Prosperity, put out like a tweet thread and said, look, I was an observer. Here's what I saw go on. She's kind of taken heat from both sides.
Which means she was probably accurate.
Probably pretty close. And so I think, I figured she was actually there. She sat in the room. She watched it all go down. So excited to get her version of that and kind of also a little bit more of this like blowback that she's gotten on Twitter from both sides.
Well, and I know all weekend long, Stephanie and I were kind of sending things on Twitter back and forth to each other. And lots of claims being made. And
oh, yeah.
Very little evidence being shown to back up some of those claims of what actually went down at the convention. So I am looking forward to chatting with Camellia.
Yeah, you could have, by watching Twitter, you could have had a completely different picture. It was really hard to suss out exactly what happened. And I think hers was the first account that seemed factual and backed up. But anyway.
I've had text from the Freedom Caucus side saying we've transformed the GOP. It all starts on Saturday, And then I read her account, and I read the press release from Neil Meyer, and I'm going, it doesn't sound like a big pull the trigger and you get a little pop gun. Nothing happened. It sounds like a lot of drama.
A misfire.
But in terms of anything big, nothing. Go back to the 2020 platform, right? Because the amendments, the draft didn't get passed. Nothing happened.
Yeah. The different thing was the Freedom Caucus. They got their they got their chair, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Freedom Caucus people got their chair and they got their slate of delegates. But like if you watched what happened in the county caucuses, where they kind of tried to take over the county caucuses, I think most people that didn't come as a surprise. So that they got the delegates. The delegates that were going to go, like all of our delegates, regardless of which slate you would have voted for, they're all voting for Trump anyway. So that's like a big, they're still voting for Trump. They were going to vote for Trump. It's just different people in the seats, I guess. And then, and they did change, I think, the national committee men. So, and committee women. So we can hear more from Camellia on that.
This sounds a lot of ego going on. Here we are. We just wrapped up turkey season yesterday. It's like, I got a bigger beard. No, I got a bigger beard. Or deer season. I got 10 points on my antlers. Well, you only have 8 points.
Kind of like the argument I was trying to start with the lieutenant governor and his lovely wife Claudia over their turkeys.
Yes,
that was good. That was good.
Well, and I hope
you held him to it, didn't you?
Well, and I hope you saw my tweet over the weekend, and it kind of foreshadowed, I think.
Yes, it was so good.
it was good.
What happened yesterday, and so we literally do say this in amongst lawyers, and it says if the facts are against you, you argue the law. If the law is against you, you argue the facts. If the law and the facts are both against you, then you pound the table and you yell like heck. And you can see this, right? Like it's not a very effective way of advocating, but it's true more times than not. And I said, if you're yelling, it probably means the facts and the law are both against you, and you're probably losing. And I happened to tune into the Senate for just a hot minute yesterday. They were only in for about.
I was going to say, blink and you missed it.
I thought this is
10 minutes.
the big budget week.
There was lots of yelling and then an adjournment, and so I'm sure there will be multiple accounts of exactly what that was. But
and the Freedom Caucus is one senator lighter as well. So.
Yeah.
They only have 4 days now.
And are they off
to
tomorrow?
get the budget done?
They're off tomorrow, right?
No, not they won't be off. The
Okay.
state's off tomorrow though, because what holiday? It's
What?
Truman Day.
Something like that. Even my state employee husband has no
Has
idea.
so many holidays
Yeah.
he can't remember them all.
He goes, I don't know.
Must be nice.
Somebody probably aged or somebody probably died. I don't know.
Well, we have a lot of fun and some entertaining things that I ran across as well that will be running by you as the morning goes on. Some serious issues going on over in the Middle East with Israel making an assault on the eastern portion of Rafah, which is a major, ironically, major supply route for, they say it's the last stronghold for Hamas, but also an alleged major supply route for humanitarian aid. So, of course, now there's fodder for the anti-Israelis to go after the Israelis again. Even an opponent of Netanyahu, though, the war cabinet minister, he's a political opponent, but he says we have to go in and clean this up. So that saga continues as Columbia canceled their general commencement, right? It sounds like they say the general commencement there and the general commencement at UCLA. So it sounds like maybe some of the School of Modern American Basket Weaving might have its own commencement in some little minor auditorium, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I know Hannah was explaining that to us about Mizzou and all the graduations are separate and there's one big one, but then a lot of little ones. And I think you're right, Randy.
Yeah, some of the different divisional schools are just bigger than others. So I was a December grad, so fewer graduate in December anyways. And then it was the ag school's December graduation. So there was, I think, 150 kids there. It wasn't very much at all, but they split it up so you're not sitting there for 18 hours.
Did anyone wear any Christmas-oriented regalia on their mortarboard or anything? What Christmas? I mean, just
Didn't
for
you
fun.
decorate yours, Hannah?
Did you?
I did.
Yeah? What'd you do?
The quote I used was, long story short, I survived.
Oh, okay.
And it was one of those I found on Pinterest and thought it summed up my college experience pretty well. And then I went to line up for graduation, and a couple girls were like, oh, like you put Taylor Swift lyrics on your cap. I had no idea. But maybe that was the start of my Swiftie era.
Well, to wrap up I don't know what to say. You survived. That was it. That was good for you. Brian Hauswirth joins us now. And Brian, you were already, your water-cooled pen, writing in that hieroglyphic-esque script that you write in that no one can make out.
Says the doctor.
You were ready in the Boone County Courthouse, and then nothing happened.
I don't
for the hazing trial.
I wouldn't say it like that. I really wouldn't. I think that
nothing substantive happened.
Nothing substantive, but the I think there as a court reporter, we had our first glimpse at Ryan Delaney. That's a big deal. Now he was not in person; he was on video. But there's two things that came out. So yes, I definitely think it was worth me going over there for. I didn't know what he looks like. I mean, I've seen what may be Facebook pages, but you don't know how accurate those things are. And quite frankly, they didn't look anything like what he looks like now. So I was able to at least get an idea of who he didn't talk, but he was there. But what's to me the most interesting thing is here we are. This case is borderline coming on a 3-year anniversary, and both sides say they need a few more days for motions. two things stick out about that. The fact is, it's going to be Friday will be a very interesting hearing because Judge Crane delayed the motions hearing until Friday. And number two, will they actually be able to get that trial wrapped up in a week when that does come to trial? We'll see. It's going to start on May 21st, but I definitely think it was newsworthy.
I got to ask Stephanie something.
Oh Lord!
How 2 years? 2 years, right? This has been in the making.
Oh, it's October of 21.
Okay,
we're coming up on 3
now. Okay, the pretrial hearing set for Monday, Boone County Courthouse. Everyone's ready. Both sides have known about it.
Tons of media, by the way.
The lawyers walk in. Tons of media. Flash bulbs in the old days when there were flash bulbs, ready to go off. And the lawyers are still having to ask time for motions. Please explain to me how this happens.
It just does.
Okay. And we'll move on. Okay. And in that vein, let me play a little sound for you. Well, that's okay.
If the facts and the law are against you.
In more news of the absurd, here's Kamala Harris coming out of a restaurant yesterday, asked about what she thinks about the Hamas deal.
She's got a lot to say about it.
The Vice President, Hamas says it accepted a ceasefire deal. Hamas says it accepted a ceasefire deal. Your reaction?
Shrimp and grits. So it's sort of just like, it is.
She was like shouting as soon as she exited.
So that's just, do they not know they need to make motions?
All right, so that's not their only case. So they're busy in that 2 years doing other things.
That's right.
And once you kind of put your head down and you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to do this, maybe I do this. There are all sorts of reasons and strategy and different and things could change throughout the course of the litigation. It's not something I'm super familiar with because a lot of what I do is elections or procurement or something like that, where we are just racing as fast as we can to get these things done because we have some sort of weird deadline like a ballot.
But that's why I ask you, because there's been times when you say on a week or two before, you say, I'm going to be out on Monday. I have a deposition. I'm going to be out on whatever. I have a trial. You don't seem to do that. Well, we were going to have a trial, and then I had to file some motions.
You haven't been here long enough because Hannah has definitely seen completely weeks blocked out and then show up and be like, just kidding, I'm coming in this week.
So it's not procrastination.
It's not necessarily procrastination.
Oh, that was carefully worded.
Yeah.
And I definitely think we have to say something about this. This case
I'm just curious as an observer.
It's extremely complicated.
Hamas has accepted a ceasefire deal. Your reaction?
What are your thoughts on Hamas accepting a ceasefire deal?
Time for the daily DC rundown, and maybe we'll have some shrimp and grits.
She was asked about her position and was just yelling out her lunch order. It was very bizarre, but that has come to be expected from Kamala. What we do know as we this morning is that Israel has been hitting targets in Rafah. But what Hamas, I guess, said, we'll accept the terms of this one deal. And Israel's like, that wasn't the deal. And so here's another deal. And Hamas says, well, I don't like that deal. So there are two deals. They are still, I think, in talks. But both have expressed frustration, and essentially the two deals are pretty far apart. So whether or not there will be some sort of ceasefire, some sort of hostage exchange, I don't think we're going to know until maybe we'll know something later today. But that conversation is ongoing. At the same time, in Congress, whether or not the speaker vote will come up, Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently camped down in Mike Johnson's office for a couple hours yesterday, and they have agreed to meet again today. She might have a path forward for him. She wants some concessions. Of course, the vote is so very close that it's her and Thomas Massey and one other person that have said they want the vote. But of course, it's been kind of, she filed it a month ago, the resolution. She can bring it up basically at any time and force the vote. Last week, she said absolutely they'd be having this vote this week. But now that appears not so likely. What we do know, the lawmakers are working on a reauthorization for the FAA this week. I think they've kicked the can on that a couple of times. I know we've talked about it here before. There are lots of amendments and things people want to do as part of that, but they're basically down to the wire on getting this reapproved. So there's not expected to be much change there. Okay. Also, we haven't talked about Henry Cuellar last week, and no one's talking about it. And I was a little bit out of the loop this weekend, and I thought, why am I not hearing about this? But it's interesting. So Henry Cuellar was indicted by the Justice Department on Friday. He is a Democrat from Texas, and they said basically he's accused of taking $600,000 from an Azerbaijani oil company and a Mexican bank, and his family was involved. It's really a bizarre set of circumstances, but because of all of Trump's legal woes, everyone's basically taking the position of he should get his day in court. Because if you said anything else, then we'd have a Trump problem.
Sounds like the House of Representatives version of Bob Menendez, right? I mean, same kind of a deal.
Has he got gold bars sewn into his sport coat?
Did his wife get a Porsche or whatever kind of car?
Apparently, I think it was like a $10,000 custom gown or something. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
And he's the guy who's an ally on border security from the Democrat Party.
Right. So Trump has actually said some nice things about him and saying, they just don't like he's being persecuted just like me. So from the sitting politicians, we've heard very little, which I think's weird. Now, also, we haven't even gotten to Trump's trial yesterday. The judge said you can go to jail. Yeah. So they had alleged 4 more violations of the gag order. Now they've said he only violated it again one more time. So we're up to $10,000 of fines. That's $1,000 for each violation. But the judge was telling him, hey, look, one more time, and we're gonna consider.
And
some
afterwards,
jail time.
Trump said, "Throw me in jail. It's fine."
I think it would shoot his poll numbers through the sky. There were 2 witnesses on the stand yesterday, mostly about the money. So the CTO and a woman who worked in the payments department.
Yeah, accounts payable. Yeah. And it's interesting. Mr. Kachal, who was the Solicitor General in Obama's administration, says, that was incriminating, the McConney guy. You can catch the podcast later, or you can watch a reprise of the whole thing on Facebook, right? There's a lot of ways to get us if you missed something.
Yeah, and if you're checking us out on our YouTube channel at Wake Up Mid-Missouri, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss us.
There you go. All right. Well, over the weekend, down in Mar-a-Lago way, it's said that there was a little bit of a casting call for the Veep stakes down there, under the guise of what? The Republican National Committee was meeting?
They were having a meeting, yeah.
Having a meeting.
Not the convention, but they were having a different meeting.
And the Trumpster was hosting.
As he does.
As he does.
As he likes to do.
And there were a bunch of faces that showed up that are on everyone's short list, but no one knows really who's on Donald Trump's short list.
And didn't he say like months ago that he had already picked? And then I got an email from him. You know, it was like a fundraising email or whatever. And he's like, help me pick. And he would like let you vote. But you didn't vote on names. You voted on like different, like, do you want like military experience? Do you want someone who has this experience? Do you want someone? And so it was like categories.
So
of
more
people.
more like an experiential thing, right? A lived experience kind of a short list.
It was a fundraising thing.
Well, you want somebody who's not from the Dakotas, maybe, right?
And I think maybe
Doug Burgum was there, by the way. When was the last time?
Crazy.
Yeah, is he? I mean, he's not actually in the running. Trump just invited him to Mar-a-Lago because the dude has so much money, right?
Yeah,
he
said
gonna
that.
Pick Doug Burgum.
So what's interesting was Tulsi Gabbard was not there.
I know. What was?
She was in New York all
She's
week.
on a book tour.
Did she get uninvited, or did she choose not to go?
I don't know. You know, she was in New York last week when we talked with her,
But
right?
Trump loves a good surprise. So he could be like faking us out.
I just wonder. So Axios is reporting that here's what he's saying. There's apparently some audio that they caught with Trump providing some real-time reviews, private luncheon, and he commented each of the following lawmakers. Marco Rubio, who, by the way, if he's from Florida, as I understand it, their electors would be eliminated, right?
Somebody moves.
30 electors wouldn't be able to vote in the Electoral College.
I think someone moves.
Okay, so Trump goes back to New York.
I don't know.
Okay. Or Marco Rubio goes back to Cuba.
I don't think he's picking Rubio.
Senator Rubio, here's what Trump said. His name is coming up a lot for vice president. That doesn't sound very enthusiastic. Tim Scott, quote, this is Trump, as a candidate, he did a good job, but as a surrogate, he's unbelievable. What do you think?
I can see that.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, based on this account per Axios, what Donald Trump said about the candidates, we ought to just ask for a little score. 10 being like, oh, yeah, he's on the short list, or she, whoever.
But he's wrong when he said as a candidate he did a good job. I don't think Trump actually believes that. He way underperformed. I was so excited for him to be in that race, and he way underperformed.
Great
but I
story.
believe that he would be an amazing surrogate.
J.D. Vance?
Yeah, that was interesting.
Trump said he wasn't a supporter of mine at the very beginning. He was saying things like, the guy's a total disaster. Anyways, I got to know him a little bit. As a non-politician, he's become one of the great senators. I'd say that's a 5 on the scale, with 10 being like right in my pocket as the VP, maybe.
Yeah.
Mike Lee, no. I love your haircut, and he's a good man, too. I think Lee's out of the running. Don't think it's going to be Mike Lee. Senator Marsha Blackburn, I didn't know she was on the list, but
apparently.
Here's what he said. When she ran in 2018, she was like the Energizer Bunny. She would go from stop to stop to stop. That's a 2. Not going to happen. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Trump says, I didn't know this. He was a supporter of my 2 campaigns, 16 and 20. He's a very rich man.
That's a 0, but I didn't know. Like, I didn't know this, and it's like no one knows who Doug Burgum is. Like, that's almost embarrassing.
Elise Stefanik, a very smart person, says Trump. She was in upstate New York when I met her. Little did we realize she would be such a big factor.
I think she's in the front.
Was it which judicial confirmation did she come to such prominence? Was it Kavanaugh or was it Barrett? Remember, she just really shone bright at one of those, pushing back against. Do you remember, John? It was one of them.
I remember the incident. I don't remember which justice.
But I mean, she really gave some of the Democrat detractors some real heat. Byron Donalds, somebody who created something very special politically. I like diversity. Diversité, as you would say. I like diversité. Donors worth millions of dollars all want a piece of Byron.
He's also got a Florida problem.
Yeah. And then Wesley Hunt out of Texas, quote, another friend of mine makes the best commercials, beautiful family.
He says, I hope you stand on stage with me when I come to your state.
And then Michael Waltz will be his Secretary of Defense, a man that knows more about the military. When I want to know about the military, I call him. And then there was one.
Another Florida man.
Yeah. Right? And then this is what Trump said on Saturday, according to Axios, about Kristi Noem before Kristi Noem's meltdown appearance on Deface the Nation on Sunday. Here's what he said. Somebody that I love. She's been with me, a supporter of mine, and I've been a supporter of hers for a long time. So that was pretty encouraging, right? Then there was this.
So you write about lessons learned in leadership, and you bring up some specific incidents I want to ask you about. You talk about meeting some world leaders, and one specific one, quote, I remember when I met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, I'm sure he underestimated me, having no clue about my experience staring down little tyrants. I've been a children's pastor after all. Did you meet Kim Jong-un?
Well, as soon as this was brought to my attention, I certainly made some changes and looked at this passage. And I've met with many, many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. As soon as it was brought to my attention, we went forward and have made some edits. So,
tell me you had a ghostwriter or that you're lying without telling me.
It's both. And then they go on to point out that not only you can't blame this on the ghostwriter because you recorded the audiobook, so you would have read this line out loud.
True.
And should
Maybe
have
she was just channeling her best Dennis Rodman,
I don't know. I mean,
or George Santos. I mean, she's freaking lying, and she won't take responsibility for it.
And that's what worries you. What's really frightening to me is you watch this. Her demeanor is there's a pause there, but her demeanor's cool, calm, collected, and it just goes back to our discussion last week when I said, how can politicians lie? And Stephanie said, that's what they do.
That's what they do. Well, but this is very kind of
moving.
Yeah, but it's very like Trump-esque too,
yes.
in that like if you had just been caught with this lie, clearly it's a lie. You either like issue a written statement that says like I'm sorry. You don't go on a media tour and then make it worse. And that except if you're Trump, right? Like you can't get enough of the media. And so it's weird that she's doing this, but it's very in like the Trump lane of like, I'm just going to keep saying these things and eventually you'll believe they're true even if they're not. I don't know. It's really weird.
Well, and then she expanded the reason that she shot Cricket, in that Cricket went from being the dog that busted the quail and ate the chickens to attacking the kids now. And then I don't have the sound, but at the very end of the book, apparently she says, a bad day to be a goat, and talking about killing the goat, and then goat meet cricket or something. I mean, it's just, it was shepherd meet cricket or something, to where she keeps having this bloodlust for killing animals. Now,
and it kind of seems like she does it out of anger, right? Because having to like euthanize or put animals down on a farm it happens. It's part of it. But it's not typically done out of anger or
laziness,
like a knee-jerk reaction because you're angry. So to me, that's the thing that stands out, right? It's not the fact that she had to put the dog down. It's the fact that it seems like it was done out of anger.
And waving the flag about it. Like, look at me. Look at how cool. I don't think anyone feels good when they put an animal down. It's a solemn occasion when
it's
you
like
do
she's
that.
waving the flag as like, look at how tough I am.
Yeah,
and I think it's kind of backfired.
I'm just an old farmer.
Yeah. It's horrible. And she'd be unwilling to put the work in to either give the puppy additional training or to like explore additional options to like rehome it somewhere. It just seems lazy and mean, and it's a lack of respect. And I think if I know one thing about farmers is they respect the land and they respect animals, and that I think for farmers is a real slap in the face and shows that you're not a farmer if you don't have respect for the farm.
It's like hunters. Yeah, you get excited when you've hunted and you've worked hard on the land to prepare habitat, and we do that on the farm. But when I kill that big deer and I'm standing there over it, it's a really solemn moment. I'm not like, yeah, look at me, baby, wow.
Sort of that bittersweet, like you're excited you got it, but at the same time, that recognizing that you did take a life in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, you do get buck fever and you do get nervous about it because you want to do a clean kill and everything. But man, when you walk up on that dead animal, there's something about that. And I don't know. I don't know. The fact she just is so jubilant about it. It's odd.
What? She's odd. And back to, I mean, and back
See,
to
this goes back to that old video of like the hotter that a girl is, the crazier she is. Have you seen that old video?
But she used to not be hot. She used to have like a John and Kate +8 hairdo, and she was like not very cute.
Yeah.
She's had a lot of work done. She's beautiful now, but she's worked really hard at it. Now, I will go back to the audio that you played in the comments when she said, because her response to this whole world leader meeting was, I'm not going to talk about specific meetings that I had, because they're like, did you or did you not meet with him? Well, I'm not going to talk about it.
It's a yes or no question.
And it's, you put that you did have the meeting in your book.
Here's some more.
And now
so you did not meet with Kim Jong-un. That's what you're saying.
No, I've met with many, many world leaders. Many world leaders. I've traveled around the world. I think I've talked extensively in this book about my time serving in Congress, my time as governor, before governor, some of the travels that I've had. I'm not going to talk about my specific meetings with world leaders. I'm just not going to do that. This anecdote shouldn't have been in the book, and as soon as it was brought to my attention, I made sure that was adjusted. So.
She's only going to talk about it when it fits the narrative that she's trying to tell.
But what a colossal disaster for her. I mean, she was on the up and up. And I feel she was just in Missouri, and we were very excited to have her. People were falling over themselves to just get a picture with her.
You were at the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you know, this is all just karma for ripping off Governor Mike Parson's book title, okay?
That's right.
That's fair. It's just, it's not a good look, and I feel it's almost sad at this point.
One of my good buddies was saying exactly the same thing you were saying, Hannah. It's like, on the farm, you do that. And with a bad dog that may be baying all day, if they're one of those that, and you can't train that out.
We're killing the neighbor's livestock.
Yeah, and you just, you have to take them down, but what kind of an idiot writes about it and makes a big deal about it?
Well, and not all dogs are cut out to be farm dogs. Right? It's just a fact. And so, like Stephanie was saying earlier, was rehoming it a potential option to get it off the farm and away from like small animals.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how between now and November, what we have, 6 short months, right?
I don't know if it feels so short.
Can you imagine the different twists fun just to see the ferociousness of their dogs. And especially when a dog on the farm, John, takes out an animal that's been a bit of a nuisance to you. You see, I have some grapevines at the farm, and I have a heck of a time ever transforming them into actually productive grapes because one or another predator gets them. The raccoons, the birds. I've seen possums in there.
The cicadas.
When I can, I take. Yeah. Oh boy, I wonder what's going to happen with that. So I couldn't find Mia, the pit bull boxer mix, who is the sweetest thing. I mean, she is just the sweetest dog.
Is that the dog that you tried to compare me to last time I said storms make me nervous?
No, I never compared you to Mia.
That is fake news.
No, that's fake news. I never did that. So I couldn't find Mia. She runs off and then she returns on her own. She's a strong-willed dog. In that sense, there's a comparison there. I will admit that. I mean, Hannah's a strong-willed producer, no doubt about that.
No, don't try to butter me up.
Thank for that. No, that's good. That's good. Keeps us in line, right, John? We need a producer to keep us in line.
Just make sure her tail's wagging.
And, so I've seen this possum from time to time and pain in the butt animal. And all of a sudden, she comes out of the forest, and there was even a little fog on the ground. It was beautiful because, it had rained and it was the weather cold and warm, ambient temperature. And out of the mist comes Mia with a blood-soaked possum hanging from her jaws. It was a beautiful thing.
Gross.
And the possum, she took out the possum. I mean, she's vicious. She's done that with a raccoon once. My wife witnessed her take out a raccoon. Holy cow. I mean,
there you go.
But I mean, she's the sweetest little thing around kids, around everyone. She's just as sweet as she can be. But it's like a trigger goes off when she gets around that kind of a setting. It's just amazing. Oh, I don't know. And then then we both took a bath in the drink because
in the what?
In the pond. They call it a drink, and in the lake there because we have a floating dock, that goes up and down on poles. Well, I guess when the lake had risen, a little ladder we have to climb up and out when kids are swimming had gotten under it. And I had to get down there, and I got in there, got algae all over me. I looked like Sasquatch when it was all over. But I lifted up the dock, and I got the ladder cleared. And Mia and I took a lake bath together. It was a great day on the farm.
Yuck. I don't know what it is.
You don't want to come swimming in our algae-infested lake? No?
I've been a lake girl my whole life.
Yeah.
I grew up going to Pomme de Terre almost every weekend. I go to Lake the Ozarks now. We spend a lot of time at Lake Carmel, which is here in Mid-Mo.
Yeah.
And COVID originated from Party Cove, right?
Maybe. But something about, I'm fine. Some people don't like the fact that you can't see the bottom, but, I don't want my feet to touch.
You don't like the...
I'm the same way. I've never met someone else who understood this.
Or the rocks, or it just feels like that's where all the fish are hanging out, and I don't want my...
Or snakes.
Yeah, or turtles.
Listen to this.
And so I know that's totally false,
Snakes
but in
and
my
turtles
mind...
and bears, oh my.
I'm the same exact way. Yes,
Possums.
I will swim in deep water all day long. If my foot touches something, I'm done. I'm
Don't
out.
you like when the little sunfish bite at your ankles?
No.
You're communing.
Absolutely not.
You're communing with nature. goings on at the GOP State Convention, you may want to do that. But to help us sort this out is Camellia Edwards, who is
Camellia Peterson.
Peterson. I got the wrong name. Sorry, Camellia. It's our first time knowing you, and I'm confused on because the first time I've run across you, Camellia, was I was looking for. God is good. I was getting all these texts from various parties and factions saying, "Oh, we crushed it." Others saying, "What a dud! Nothing happened." And then I ran across what appeared to be a very accurate and objective portrayal of what was going on, because you were in the audience there, right? You were an observer, not a delegate.
I was an observer, and thank you. No worries about my name. Usually people get the first name wrong, so no biggie.
All I know is it's at Rare Camellia with 2 L's.
You bet.
Okay,
yes.
Camellia Peterson joins us.
And I was there, yes, just as an observer, apparently because I'm a glutton for punishment, but, you know,
it was
lots of people.
It was a long day, Camellia. What time did you arrive? And then I think by reading your tweet thread, it wrapped up at, 8 p.m.? So was it an 8 to 8?
Yeah, well, and I know, a lot of the delegates were there much earlier than I was, and so I didn't get there until right around, like 9 or so. But it went all the way up until 8 o'clock.
And so you show up, and I think you discussed it took a while. There were some sort of tech issues or whatever to basically get everyone credentialed, and that's like a fancy word for just like making sure everyone who was there was supposed to be there and was properly elected from their county caucus, right?
Yes. And there's a lot of debate about that. I don't know that anybody except for, party officials know exactly what happened that, hung that process up. But it was very late. You will hear people say anywhere from, 3.5 to 5 hours. And so there are plenty of people who quibble with my couple of hours. I settled on a couple of hours because, even if you got everybody in there by the deadline of 9 o'clock, they still, when you're talking about over 800 people, it's a lot of people to go through. And it's going to take time after that anyway to get started. And so there were other things that they did to shorten up some of the time that would have normally been, spent doing other things, whether it's candidate speaking or, lunch or whatnot. So I gave it 2 hours roughly. I could be a little wrong.
I went many years ago in Springfield and was a delegate, I think, from Cole County. And I remember standing in lines and standing around and sitting and waiting a lot.
Oh, I'm sure, no doubt.
Well, that's a redo of what happened in many of the county caucuses, right? I mean, there were longer than expected lines
Cole
this March.
County was pretty smooth, but Boone County, we had some tech issues, and but everyone was really patient and for the most part in a good mood. And I think, and so after the long wait, then we move on to you have to elect a chair. And that's where kind of the things started breaking loose, I guess. Is that a good way to put it?
Sure. I mean, everything was, there's no doubt about it, no denying it. Everything was pretty disorganized, and the crowd was restless, and, that justifiably so. But it was, there were 2 nominations. I think a lot of people expected Nick Myers to be one of the chair nominations. And what came about was
Camellia, let's just explain to folks who don't understand inside politics, who is Nick Myers?
Sure.
Not everyone knows that name.
Yes, Nick Myers is the state GOP chair, current state GOP chair.
Okay, and the thought was he was going to be the chair of the convention. Is that traditionally what happens?
Right. I don't know, honestly, if it's traditionally what happens, but I think that, there probably definitely needed to be a change at that point. So Eddie Justice was nominated along with Sophia Shore. And Sophia Shore won that vote. I think it was probably closer than what had been anticipated because a lot of the folks who came that had kind of organized together were really organized, and they did a good job of that. And they were there in significant numbers. Okay, so let's
go ahead and reset this now. You said Sophia Shore was elected by a narrow margin, and who else was nominated?
Eddie Justice, and
who is Eddie Justice, and who is Sophia Shore?
Eddie Justice, yes, he is I believe he's the current 8th congressional district chair. He's from the Poplar Bluff, Southeast Missouri area.
Okay.
And, he's been involved in this stuff and has run, congressional district conventions before and, does a good job of things.
Okay.
Sophia Shore is Bill Eigle's campaign manager.
And
she also chaired the 4th congressional caucus. And, everything that I heard that she did a great job there. And I will say that she did a great job at this one, too. I mean, she really kept things going.
Good. Okay. So that's Camellia Peterson. And as she was our reporter, you didn't know you were going to be our erstwhile reporter on the ground there, Camellia, did you?
My first time being a reporter.
And you can, and John Marsh, I mean, you have another reporter to add to the crew here on Wake Up
Camellia
Mid-Missouri.
and I go way back.
Hi, John. Yeah, what's up, John?
Camellia, talk to us. I mean, as we've watched Lincoln Days and GOP gatherings through this whole election cycle in Missouri, we've seen a lot of heated and things out of left field stuff come up, whether it's just a giant crowd or potential candidates getting in each other's faces. What are you hearing from the rank and file out there about that?
Well, I think we see a lot of what we are seeing right now is kind of a result of what went on during COVID, because I think that was a real wake-up call for a lot of people. And so people really they understood the importance of getting involved in their government because it affects their lives in very real ways. And so they began looking for ways to get involved and make a difference. And one of those ways is being involved in the Republican Party and in the central committees. And so we really, when I work a lot in grassroots, and so there was really an influx of people into central committees because it's typically been hard to get people involved, on those. And also just in grassroots groups in general, whether they're Republican clubs or conservative clubs, whatever they are, there was just really a spike in the number of those kind of groups formed and people really wanting to get involved. And I think this is still, a result of that. They're not happy with the status quo. And sometimes I don't know if they know exactly what they want, but they do know that they want change. And so I think that's a lot of what we're seeing.
But did we get any change on Saturday? So we got a different chair than maybe might be expected, but then we get these delegate slates, right? So we got to elect the delegates that are then going to go to the national convention on behalf of Missouri. So that's one thing we did. And then we elected our RNC committee, our committee man and committee woman. Those changed. There were competing delegate slates, and we got new committee people. But, ultimately, are those people going to vote any different than the people who were there before? I mean, my understanding is both slates would have voted for Trump.
Right. No, that's a great question. And that's something that a couple of people called and talked to me about yesterday. And they're asking, is this significant in any way? Does this affect, and somebody asked on Twitter, does this impact the average primary voter at all? And the answer is no, because you're right. I mean, it's, the slates and the committee man and committee woman, that doesn't really impact state level politics at all. And so, the platform was probably the thing that would have had the most impact. And even that is debatable, but that was the one thing that did not get completed.
And so why? What happened with the platform?
Right. So they, as they were moving through, they got to the platform part, they voted down the entire platform, which basically meant that they could amend the whole thing rather than just adding resolutions to the end of it. And, for those who don't know, basically from the congressional district caucuses, people would submit amendments to the Republican state platform. And then there's a platform committee who would take all of these amendments and then would go through them and, just basically kind of weed things out because you have to have somebody do that. They got 230 amendments just from the congressional caucuses. And so there were lots of duplicates. There were things in there that were illegal. There was and so, it's messy. And they have to take those. So then, they make another draft platform taking all of those things into consideration. That was presented at the state convention. The delegates voted that down and then took amendments from the floor. And so there were over 30 of those, and working through that takes time, especially when you've got a lot of people who don't understand the process. And I would say there were people there who thought that, they could legislate by the platform. And so there were, attempts there. Anyway, so there were, when it came down to it, and Sophia was fair and allowed everybody to speak on, the issues, but they really tried to keep things going. But they came to 20 minutes till 8, and Representative Dan Stacy and Ben Baker noticed that there was not a quorum because it was just attrition. People had been trickling out because they were tired. And I honestly think, there were probably a lot of people who felt like that the certain faction that was there had enough numbers to do whatever they wanted, and it didn't matter if they were there. So they left, and they ended up with no quorum. And that was like, when that happens, the meeting's over, nothing is done, and that's it.
Camellia, I have to ask you, we're talking with Camellia Peterson, who was an observer and did some great reporting on @RareCamellia on her X Twitter reporting there on the thread. It sounded like at the end of the day, you, I think, quoted President Trump about the Charlotte incident, like there were fine people on both sides. And, it didn't get done, but there's plenty of blame to go around. So, but two questions. Were you you look very young. I don't know. Were you around at the Tea Party days? Because I was around at Tea Party days. And I remember there was general dissatisfaction. There was unanimity and unity within conservative / GOP ranks. And it was all for one for all. We're against the machine. And okay. I don't get that sense this cycle. There's this divisiveness. And I think that may have been reflected in what you reported as booing Vivek Malik and Jay Ashcroft. I mean, that seems there was a unanimous incivility in Tea Party time, but it was directed against the other people, not within, that I remember. How about you? What's different this time?
Yeah, this is something that was just, to me, just watching all of this was fascinating, because we've had what we call the MAGA movement, right? And so these are all I would say virtually every person there would consider themselves a MAGA Trump supporter. But at the same time, it's like you have this dichotomy of factions within this now, where you have quote unquote grassroots MAGA and establishment MAGA. And so it's very strange to watch, because that's, and I have a confession to make. Toward the end of that tweet thread, I made a little comment and said, and called the faction that had the numbers the anti-Trump faction.
You did say that, yeah.
And I will tell you, the reason I said that is because they did come in and they voted against the slates and the people who were supposedly endorsed by Donald Trump and by the RNC. And, Donald Trump has been very much, supportive of the RNC and going along with what they're doing. They're kind of one entity now. So, that was a little poke, just because a lot of those folks are also the same folks that if you don't toe the line every little bit, why you're pariah and you're out and you're the enemy. But at the same time, they kind of turned around and did the same thing. But, in fairness, that was probably not completely fair on my part. And so, but anyway, yes, that divide is really fascinating.
Well, was there actual booing though? There was booing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I would say that's my biggest problem with that group of people. And I know that not everybody in that group of people, is on board with that kind of behavior. But and I'm going to try not to name a lot of names here or anything. But when you talk about a certain group of people that made up, a lot of that faction, they are known for that kind of really rude and raucous behavior, whether it's on behalf of their own candidate or otherwise. And so this was definitely more of that, and they definitely booed a lot of people. And so, I told Representative Jamie Gregg sang the national anthem, and I joked with him later, and I said, they probably should have brought you back up later to sing Kumbaya, because we really needed it.
Well, Camellia, fantastic
life, and no one loves me.
Hannah takes no hostages, John.
And we blame Scott Vaughn.
Yes, every Monday. This is a Florida man story. It involves a man by the name of Randall Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Different from our good old buddy Randall Tobler. He woke up one morning in the year 2024 and found out that he is a semi-viral sensation on YouTube.
Why?
For videos that he created in 1989, and they are tutorials for how to run Microsoft Word on the old school
Wait a minute.
Macintosh computer.
1989 tutorials makes the guy famous in 2024?
Well, he is being hailed as the cure of insomnia, and there are over 10,000 comments on these videos online saying that people are literally putting these on because they're so boring and it makes them fall asleep. So he's helping people fall asleep.
Yeah, better than melatonin.
Yeah, apparently. There's a couple different ones, and he himself did not upload these to YouTube. Someone unearthed them a couple years ago and posted it, but here's a little sample of just how boring it is.
First word processor that I ever used was a program called WordStar on an IBM program. And
and it's almost 2 full hours of that. Yeah. So there you go. Wake up one day at the age of 80 and discover that you're famous online for videos that you did many moons ago.
2024, and he finds an actual use for COBOL in the modern era, I guess.
Isn't that fun? No, that was for instructing people on Word, but on Macintosh?
Yeah, like, the OG real big cube that sits on your desk.
Yeah, the cube, yeah, isn't that crazy?
We are getting, I think, an Apple announcement later this morning about their new iPads. I'm an Apple.
Yeah, they're saying they need an update. jungle grass. The timing, John, have you ever had that where the timing is just not right? When you have a little time, it's raining or it's wet, and then when you don't have the time, things dry up. And I'm talking about, I've got 8-inch tall grass now, and I can't.
Yeah.
Thank you, Salter Lawn Service. That was us. I mean, I was like, our neighbors are going to cancel us because it was either like a 6 a.m. or my husband was like out there with like a headlamp trying to mow. And
That's what I'm going to have to do.
We just gave up pretty early on and said,
yeah. So I don't know when we're going to get a break. I don't know. Maybe it'll dry up enough today. But then you end up with skid marks all over the lawn. You know, from the ZTR, you're turning and like, oh no, I took off half my turf.
Do you often struggle with skid marks?
No, only Joe Biden, apparently.
You know, I wasn't going to bring that up because it does kind of feel like it's bordering on the
elder abuse.
Yeah.
Not everyone knows when you're mowing the. What is it?
There was a video over the weekend of the president.
But I mentioned skid marks in the context of mowing the lawn, and you go down that rabbit
and we're going
hole.
straight to Joe Biden. When Hannah hears those words, she thinks Joe Biden.
Skid Mark McGee.
Well, as long as we're talking about Joe Biden,
he did exactly the toddler, like the 2-step stop, where you're just like, oh, there, I know,
slight bend in the knees.
Yeah,
a
little grimace.
And if you don't know,
underpants.
Yeah, if you don't know what we're talking about, over the weekend there was this short clip of the president that was released.
You call me poopy pants.
Yeah. And it looked like he was maybe stopping to talk to some reporters as he was walking somewhere.
Yeah.
And he, like Stephanie just said, did the two-step pause, bent his knees a little bit. And the running theory is that he might have had an accident.
Oh, come on now.
Because the stance is very familiar to...
The truth is, though, that there's a lot of elderly people that do have control problems, and, they lose their dignity therein. So
they
I don't
are
know whether...
also not the president of the United States.
That's true. However, John Kennedy, I think, showed President Biden a lot of respect when it comes to his handling of the Hamas protesters.
President Biden could stop this stuff on a dime. On a dime. How can I put this? It just goes to show you that even old people can suck. Okay?
And Tom Cotton is standing behind him. Rick Scott's on one side behind him, just very stoic and not too... Tom Cotton is like the little boy who's behind the guy who's throwing spitballs at the teacher, and he's breaking up. He is breaking up.
He looks like that. You know how they just did the montage from the Ryan Gosling episode of SNL, and the entire episode, people are breaking character. Tom Cotton is breaking character in the back.
Just breaking up. It's great.
Oh, that's brutal. That's hilarious. I hadn't seen that.
I do not want John Kennedy to go away. He just provides so much color in the whole political thing. He's great.
And and when I was growing up, if I would have thought a Republican would be elected in the state of Louisiana, was unheard of. Yeah. I mean, and now it's completely, the whole thing has changed, but he is pretty impressive. I know. Really good speaker.
President Biden is scared to death to alienate the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party. And he has read that new CNN poll, just came out, that said that 52% of likely voters, a CNN poll said 52% of likely voters will never, under any circumstances, on God's good green earth, vote for Joe Biden. 52%.
Cotton can't contain himself.
52% will vote for the guy who salts the French fries at McDonald's before they will vote for Joe Biden.
Well, and speaking of old people who suck, did you see that Bernie Sanders announced that he's going to run for another term?
He's 85, isn't he?
He's 82.
82.
And he's going to be old as dirt.
That was a close one.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I'll tell you.
I'm going to make sure that the Democrat Socialists win. We got to get the work back to the people.
I went to his, I covered it when I worked at Missouri Net. He spoke at Westminster College in Fulton, and I will tell you, he had a huge crowd.
Bernie Sanders?
Yes. thunder. This would have been 2017, either 2017 or 2018. But a lot of young people. He had older people there too, some farmers, but primarily his base was young people. But his whole speech, as I recall, a lot of it was about climate change. But he didn't say if he was going to run again in 2020. I kept waiting, and he didn't do a media availability. I was hoping he would have done that. But I will tell you, he was very popular with young people, at least there. It was, they were lined up out the door. People couldn't get in, so they had to watch on TVs and stuff. So he definitely has a base, and he will run again, and he will win in the state of Vermont. He will win.
I think this is a prime example of, when folks from my generation, even up to millennials, when we say that, there's too many old white guys in politics, I think this is a prime example of it not just being Republican lawmakers, right? Like, it's on both sides of the aisle, and I think some younger blood would do both sides some good.
Well, part of the problem with that, Hannah, is you have to be, a certain age. I think it's 30 to run for the Senate, President 35. So, I mean,
right.
you knock out a big chunk of it. But the reality is, whether or not our listeners like it or not, he's on the ballot in Vermont, and the people there like him. I mean, obviously, they keep reelecting him, and is it darn near twice won the nomination, and his supporters will tell you he got robbed. They will tell you in 2016 by those superdelegates.
There were a lot of people, Hannah, your age, who were supporting Bernie Sanders because of his Democrat socialist policies. I mean, he's a socialist, and a lot of young people like that when there's a problem, they want the government to solve it. I mean, that's just the truth.
Yeah,
right?
That was a few years ago. I feel like that's starting to change a little bit. But, yes, he will probably win his election. But when we say that there's too many older guys,
why is your age or your race an exclusion in 2024 among certain demographic groups? Why?
You think race is an exclusion?
You said old white guys.
Well, okay, yes, that is true. I did say that. No, I just look at President Biden, prime example. Now, not everyone his age is in the same intellectual boat, right? I'm not saying that. But you do run that risk at a higher rate when you elect older guys.
But remember,
A, and B, if you're sick of things not happening or not changing and you're re-electing the same people every single time or the same type of people, nothing's ever going to change.
Is it more just of an establishment incumbency thing than it is age? Yeah, I think that's what bothers me is the incumbency.
Yeah,
like it is just like a railroad. It's just guaranteed. You know?
The guys who have just been there too long.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
The point I would make, and all very good discussion here, but I'll give you two examples. One, they said he was too old. One, the media thought he was too young. Ronald Reagan. It's all I heard for the first 4 years. He's too old. Can he possibly finish a second term? And he really put that to bed at Kemper Arena in Kansas City during that second debate. But fast forward 6 years later to that 8 years later, 1992. George H.W. Bush picked a guy named Dan Quayle to be his vice president. And by the way, he was the vice president. Dan Quayle from Indiana, senator, been here to Missouri several times.
How do you spell potato?
He was popular in Indiana, although Lloyd Benson kind of hammered him during that debate. But I remember the media's focus. They asked him about his record in military service, but they kept that was the whole thing. Are you too young? Do you have experience? So it seems like they either feel like you're too old or in some cases you're too young. And those were only a few years apart.
I for one am just so tired. I'm so over the immutable characteristics of a person somehow defining their eligibility. Because and
that goes both ways because I faced a lot of that too.
No, that's what I mean. Yeah, right. And that's the problem. I would like to think about experience and wisdom. I enjoy young voices, and in fact, in my leadership position, have advocated for young voices because I'm aware of my blind spots.
Yeah.
There's one or two, Hannah, just one or two.
Well, how old was Ronald Reagan? Ronald Reagan was what? And he was just days away from being 70 when he was elected.
And that was a huge, huge deal. And, it was huge. It was a big deal, and quite frankly, Walter Mondale wasn't a whole lot younger than him, in 1984. But That was an
But
issue.
it's so funny. The woke crowd who preaches tolerance and inclusion, but not old guys, not young white guys. Only if you're in the right bucket should you be included. And it's just so hypocritical on its face. That to me speaks of the lack of emotional intelligence and probably just a lack of wisdom that a lot of young people have. You know, they don't see the hypocrisy of their very stance when it comes to the whole inclusive thing and tolerance.
Yeah, and I think like innately, like just naturally, you want to elect people who are like you. I mean, I think, and I don't know that, I think, so you have to be careful about that, right? But, I remember watching when I think it was when Schmidt was first elected, and I think Ashcroft was up there, and I was at the inauguration. I was watching all of the people come across the stage, and they all had young kids and young families. And I thought, and some of them had, been in the law or been in business. And as I watched that, I'm like, these people know what it's like to be parents. They know what it's like to struggle as a first-time home buyer. They know what it's like, to sign a paycheck or whatever. And I thought, they're struggling with some of the same problems that I've struggled with. And I feel like if I went to them with my problem, they'd understand. And so, in some of these circumstances, I feel like that's a natural human thing, right? To want to have people that would understand where you're coming from in some sort of shared experience.
There's been a lot of
whether that's youth or female or parent or whatever.
Well, if you read evolutionary biologists or social scientists, I mean, that are honest. They'll say, look, it's a natural trait among evolved or higher ordered species to flock together. You can call it bias, but why don't we just be honest about it? We tend to want to flock with our own, right? I mean, when you're at church, you sort of sit next to the people you always sit next to, or when you go to your meeting at the RNC, you got your buddies, and especially if they're of your same age and gender and everything. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you're making bad decisions. That doesn't mean you want to sweep away the rest of the world. It's our natural tendency as biological beings. You don't see turkeys flocking with vultures. Even though, you know what I mean?
Not on purpose.
But I think what we know, too, is the data and the science and the evidence backs up, especially once you get into organizations, be it that government or private institutions, that having a diversity of age and background and everything else makes a better organization, typically, in that having these disagreements, having someone push back on you when maybe you do have a blind spot probably makes for a better outcome overall.
But if you're a leader that doesn't realize that and the state has to mandate it, you probably shouldn't be a leader.
And I would add this too. I mean, and it's all good discussion, but if the voters of Vermont, and I will say they will, I am confident they will re-elect Bernie Sanders. He may even run for president down the line. You never know. I mean, this guy is formed. I would have never known his age. I was not far from him in Fulton. If they want to elect him to the Senate, that is their right. If the voters in South Carolina several years ago wanted to elect Strom Thurmond, who was darn near 100,
But with dogs, they eat weird stuff and they don't care. And like Ace 188 a frog. Shady Lady, better known as Shadow, stole 2 crab rangoons from her owner's carryout bag. And grand dog Ollie ate a bag of red pepper spice cracklins followed by lots of water. Ginger Rush's dog ate a foam hair roller, a jar of Vaseline, and 8 chapsticks in one sitting.
Ooh.
Sprite and Wonder ate the siding off their house and some plastic army men, and then they ate half the couch and Mom's dentures. Bo the dog ate wild and poisonous mushrooms, had to get his stomach pumped after hallucinating and being sick. Buster swiped a cooling pumpkin pie off the kitchen counter one Thanksgiving. Ludwig, Tess, and Pip, the German Shepherds, and Oski the Malamute ate the wheels off a lawnmower, and Aki ate 4 pounds of butter. Jet the Black Lab ate an entire bush, a full diaper, and came home gnawing a horn off a dead bull. And they said that's what gave him the death breath. And now you know the rest of that story.
Man.
So coons and possums for your dog on the farm, A-OK.
Yeah, Mia and her possum hunt over the weekend. Yeah, we had to get new carpeting about a decade ago. We had dog nose longers with us. Zoe, the dog, got into we left a pen on the coffee table, and Zoe, we came home after an outing, and she'd gotten into the ballpoint pen, and I mean, it was all over the carpet. I tried everything, and I YouTubed. I tried everything. Once that ballpoint pen stuff gets on lighter stuff, I don't think it's coming out. I tried hairspray. I tried the whole works.
My dad.
I remember as a kid, my bird dog. We had a bird dog who was part Brittany, part setter.
Mm-hmm.
Got into my entire sack of Halloween candy. Ate all the candy, all the wrappers, and the sack.
Oh no!
And then got sick in my closet of my bedroom.
My dad used to have a miniature pinscher, which is a super small dog.
Mm-hmm.
And when we weren't looking, he ate like an entire McDonald's cheeseburger off the kitchen table. He kind of hopped up in the chair and grabbed it. And when my dad came back from the bathroom or wherever he went, he tried to blame my brother and I for eating his food. We're like, we did not.
And you guys are the ones who are always giving me dirty looks when I'm just like, I don't think dogs are for me. I don't really like dogs.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's endearing. It's like when your toddler does something they're not supposed to, and you can't really stay mad at them, and you laugh about it eventually.
I just keep thinking about Karen. Was it Karen the ostrich who ate the keys and then died? Like, some of this stuff's dangerous.
Yeah.
Any story centered around a protagonist named Karen is okay
Yeah,
in
there
my
you go.
book. That's all right.
That's self-induced.
Get what you've got coming to you.
Yeah.
When we come back,
Sir. I'm doing good. I just have one complaint.
Uh-oh. What is that?
Since you've taken over the show, my Chris theme is gone.
Uh-oh. No, I didn't make that call. I don't know. We'll get that back. Hey, I wanted to touch base with you, first of all, about an issue that, it's local, but it's still sort of speaks of the whole Soros-sponsored, dysfunctional, rogue prosecutor issue that we see nationally. And that's Kim Gardner. She's being audited by Scott Fitzpatrick, the state auditor, and she's like AWOL. What's that all about?
Kim Gardner is like that famous line from Godfather 3 that Michael Corleone said when he was trying to get out of the mafia business. He said, every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Kind of how it is with Kim Gardner. You're thinking, we finally have gotten rid of this woman. We don't have to worry about her not prosecuting cases anymore. She could go live her life, leave us alone. And now, she's disappeared, basically. The Post-Dispatch is speculating that maybe she's moved to South Carolina. Apparently her husband coaches track at Clemson. But this is extremely bizarre when you think about it. A former circuit attorney and a lawyer that was representing the people in the city of St. Louis is now basically on the lam and can't be served a subpoena. I think it's a fitting ending to her career.
Well, I remember at the time when her deputies were not showing up and she wasn't showing up and she wasn't there. Wasn't it because she was studying nursing? She was taking nursing courses or something? What happened to that?
Yeah, we ended up learning later when she wasn't coming to the I think they wanted to question her regarding some of these things that were going on, and they found out that she was going to nursing school at night. I think around that time, probably a couple of years ago, she probably knew the handwriting was on the wall, and she probably wasn't going to be circuit attorney much longer. She decided to embark upon a second career and was moonlighting, going to nursing school at night. Maybe that's why none of the cases were being heard, because she wasn't completely focused on her job.
Just awful. I mean, if we can thank some folks here in Missouri, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, is getting rid of her. And I'm just like, don't let the door hit you. If you're gone, you're gone. Maybe we should just be thankful that we don't have to deal with her anymore. All right.
Just think about this. What if you're like about to have surgery or something, major surgery? You're always kind of nervous. And the doctor and Kim Gardner come in to tell you before your surgery.
I think it would be terrifying to see her in a healthcare setting. All right. We heard earlier we had Camellia Peterson on. She was observing over the weekend at Springfield. And I think there were, regardless of how things went down, I think a lot of people are like, maybe this just isn't it. Maybe we should just have a different party. Maybe a new party is what we need. And it was reported last week that there is a man. He's from Webb City. I think he's an attorney. Of course, he's an attorney and a businessman from Webb City. He has turned in the signatures basically to establish a new political party. I think he needs to work on his marketing. He might be a businessman, but the Better Party is like the worst name in the history of party names. Because that's like Clean and Cleaner Missouri. Now we're going to get someone else who says the Bestest Party, more better. I don't know. Like, that's a terrible name. But other than it being a terrible name, he got 21,587 signatures to, only about half of which were valid, to establish this new party is going to show up on the ballot against Josh Hawley. I mean, what are your thoughts on this third party run in Missouri?
Look, I love to see anyone participating in the Republican system or the Republic system, democracy. I know we're not supposed to say that. Everyone should have a voice, but they also have to realize that our system has been set up for two parties, not a third party. And I always tell my libertarian friends that you're basically wasting your vote because, this is a two-party system. It's very hard. And I know he's establishing this in Missouri, but if they ever wanted to go national or anything, it takes a whole lot of time and money to get signatures, to get on the ballots in those different states. Then the state legislatures, they set it up that way on purpose. So I understand his frustration, but if he is conservative leaning, I would hope he could find some common ground with the Republican Party and bring those 21,000 and other folks back to the Republican Party, because as we know, this is going to be a very, very close election. We need everybody to get Joe Biden out of the White House.
That said, though, Chris, would you agree or disagree that if you look historically, I mean, look back at the difference Ross Perot made, back in the early 90s, the reason George H.W. Bush wasn't reelected. And that was a time when coming off of a war effort and economic doldrums, look what happened. It seems like from time to time, these third-party movements, and we're seeing it now, they bubble to the surface. I think it's something that, should not be lost on the major parties that, hey, they're not happy with us, guys. We got to get our act together. Yay or nay?
I would argue that what beat George W. Bush was read my lips. No more, no new taxes. And I think him breaking that pledge that he made as a convention turned a lot of Republican voters off, and they were looking at other options like Ross Perot, who got 19% of the vote, which was historic. But if you remember, Dr. Tobler, he dropped out of the race.
Right.
A bunch of conspiracy theories said George Bush was trying to disrupt his daughter's wedding. People started thinking he was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Came back, didn't have the same flavor or fervor that he had back at the beginning of his campaign.
That's Chris Arps. He joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Chris, you and your morning show partner, your radio show partner, Tim Jones, our former Speaker of the House, State of Missouri, you guys have done a lot of talking on air about the Missouri Senate and the filibuster, and they broke the record last week and all that. Where's this going to go when the smoke clears? Are they all back in June for a special session, you think?
I think it's definitely a special session is probably going to happen. Senator Bill Eigel is engaging in a high-reward, high-risk strategy. If he can show people, the grassroots, that the Jefferson City's the swamp, the budget's out of control, he can stop that budget being passed before the deadline. I think that shows to those folks that he is serious about trying to clean up the Missouri government. Other folks may look at it as he's a jerk and he's just holding up things. I think either way, if you're running for statewide statewide, you don't have as much name recognition as you need. The filibuster and these type of tactics is good for him. We also know that there's bad blood between Rowden and McLaughlin and all of them. McLaughlin and Rowden, this is their last term in the Senate. They're term limited. If you're Bill Eigel, what better way to tarnish their legacy by them not meeting the budget deadline and have to go into a special session, which also gives you more publicity. So I think Bill sees this as a win-win for him. We shall see.
Do you have an idea, Chris, why the IP reform semi-deal that seemed to have happened maybe after the long filibuster last week, why IP reform hasn't been put on the floor? Why don't they just get over that and then if Eigel and the Freedom Caucus didn't deliver on their, I think, at least implicit promise to then approach the FRA and the others and get it done, then it would be on them. Why hasn't that come up?
I think it's just, for me, I think it's just strictly a thing of egos. Is that the governor is saying, you're not going to tell me when I'm going to sign a bill. I'll sign it when I get good and ready. And I think the leadership in the Senate is saying the same thing to Bill Eigel and the Freedom Caucus, is that you're a handful of people, we have the majority, and you're not going to dictate the timetable of when we put bills on the floor. I think it's nothing more than that.
I'm going to ask you a question that I asked Camellia Peterson when she was with us. She was at the GOP convention in Springfield, which
I was there too.
Okay, well, good. I want to ask you this. Okay, you and I were both at around at the Tea Party. I remember I spoke underneath the arch in I think it was 2000, I forget when, 2011, 12. And, there was a big unified conservative movement called the Tea Party, right? And it wasn't Rhino versus establishment, at least not that I remember. There's one big happy Uncle Sam wearing flag clothing bearing people of all ages, and really a great thing. Remember the march on the mall, and what's different about this time in conservatism within the GOP party versus the Tea Party from your perspective?
I think the Tea Party, people were upset. They saw Obamacare. They saw the socialization of our government and of healthcare, and people were upset. And you saw a lot of grassroots activity and speeches that you attended and spoke to. And that activism, Randy, eventually got people elected into office. And I think these people, the Tea Party people, were expecting a lot of changes because they had got behind these people and elected them. And I think that they feel a lot of these people went to the D.C. and the Jeff City swamp and just became swamp creatures. And I think we're seeing anger about that. And I think that's a big part of this.
Mm-hmm. So what? I mean, so you're thinking that a lot of the Tea Party people got infected with the swamp gas, and
well, I'm saying I think some of them. I think
some of the elected officials.
Yeah, because some of the elected officials got infected, as you said, and they're not doing what they should be doing. And they're saying, "Hey, we're tired. We're $34 trillion in debt. We don't feel that the politicians are listening to us, and you have an R beside your name like I do, and you're not listening to me." And I think we're seeing the results of that. I hope that we can come together and coalesce because, look, Donald Trump, even though we see the third parties that are taking votes away from Biden, it's going to be much more difficult for Donald Trump to win the election when he's getting 60 to 70% of the Republican vote. We need everybody.
We are watching as Stormy Daniels is prepared to testify today in the Trump trial. Are you, got any over/under bets on whether Trump goes to jail over the gag order and how that might affect him, or what are you expecting in the rest of these coming weeks?
I would be absolutely shocked if the judge did put Donald Trump in jail for contempt. We saw Donald Trump's press conference yesterday where he's basically begging the judge, please put me in jail. You'll make me a martyr. I don't think that they'll do that. And just think of the logistical nightmare of putting Donald Trump in jail with him having secret service protection. I don't think they want that nightmare. The judge has to issue this empty threat.
Wouldn't it be great theater, though? Oh, wouldn't it be great to see? Oh, man. We wouldn't have enough hours in the day to be talking about it. I'm telling you.
Good for the talk show business.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Chris Arps, thanks for moving your spot today for us. I appreciate that so much. Look forward to the next conversation.
Appreciate you guys having me. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Oh, man, that would be something. That
Dow was almost up 0.5%. Let's start with the S&P up just a little over 1%. NASDAQ closing in on 1.2% up. So everybody's in the green. That was a result of big gains in technology, especially also consumer discretionary and industrials were doing really well. The only thing in the red yesterday was real estate, and that's been a sore conversation for I know.
I don't want to talk about it, Steph.
I know. All right. Let's look at where we are headed today. Everything is looking in the green. So maybe a good day again on the markets. We've also, so I love hearing about movies that come out. I don't have a lot of time to watch a lot of movies, but I have been hearing people watch this new because as much as things make my things that suck list, and there's a lot, right? It's a very long list.
Sandwiches.
Yeah. I will say, I'm going to admit publicly that not on that list, and I have a weakness for them, is Pop-Tarts. And you would think... Wait, that they would be on my bad list.
Hold up. You give me so much grief on the rare occasions that I eat a Pop-Tart, and you're telling me, Stephanie Bell, that you like Pop-Tarts and you've been a hypocrite this whole time?
Flavor and frosted or unfrosted?
Brown sugar and cinnamon.
Frosted?
No other flavor.
No. Okay.
Sometimes cold, sometimes hot. I love a Pop-Tart. I mean,
with or
really.
without ranch dressing.
But
you think you know someone.
Seinfeld made a movie about Pop-Tarts. It's called Unfrosted.
Yes.
It debuted last week on Netflix, or premiered, and it's like kind of fictionalized. It's not like the real story, and it's got really bad reviews. But I'm still probably gonna watch it because
I've watched it.
You did?
Yes.
Was it good?
We finished it last night. It's silly, like obviously a kid's movie. It's kind of this cool mix of they're trying to make it seem like it took place, I think it was the 60s, but there's very like futuristic elements built in with the vintage retro stuff. It's kind of cool.
I'm going to have to watch it, but they're saying it's not actually like 100% factual. But if you want to hear the story, there are some really interesting things. Now, I will say, like, it is a little bit of nostalgia because I remember eating Pop-Tarts as a kid. My kids have recently become obsessed with Pop-Tarts. But Pop-Tarts, they sold 3 billion Pop-Tarts in 2022. So they are still just totally killing it.
Ultra-processed foods. It's so bad.
Yeah,
this is why we call you poopy pants.
I love Pop-Tarts too, but I know they're bad for me.
So back in the day, in the 1960s, Post Consumer Brands was in a competition with Kellogg to try to create a shelf-stable, jam-filled, toastable breakfast item, which sounds gross, right? And 4 flavors came out. All of them were unfrosted. The frosting came at a much later time, and initially they called it the fruit scone. Which doesn't sound nearly as cool as the Pop-Tart. So they changed their marketing to Pop-Tart. They came out with a whole bunch of ads, started marketing toward kids, and the rest of it really is history.
Anything that has a shelf life of eternity, like Twinkies, Little Debbies, and Pop-Tarts, you got to be wondering about
delicious.
that.
So the first 4
can't be good for you.
The first 4 flavors: strawberry,
Seems like this whole thing is a big circus, but we'll be reporting on that tomorrow, I'm sure. But
some of my favorite little anecdotes are coming out about Trump, though, and it's like confirming like he's just such a weird personality. We did just see him on TV. He was giving his normal morning speech before he goes in, and he was reading off of a piece of paper.
He was.
Which that is weird for him.
He was reading off of what I think had just been stated on Good Morning America, as best we could tell. We don't have audio. We're looking at the caption, closed caption, but
the trial's confirmed. Like he doesn't send any emails himself. He like does no email, which I just think is like in today, like that's just so weird.
Oh
right?
yeah,
that's weird. And
my
then
kind of guy.
Yesterday on his, his payroll employee confirmed that like she sends the checks off and then he signs them, and then they're like, does he ever not sign them? And she was like, yeah, he just writes void, but it came up that he writes all the time in Sharpie. Which I thought that's a very like Trump-ian thing, right? That like
it's a big felt
He's
pen.
ready to give autographs. That's why he's using Sharpie.
No fine tip marker with him. A big broad marker.
And I kind of like it because it's like you're not taking it back. Like what's done is done. So like if I it's very permanent, right? And I'm not wishy-washy about it. I'm signing all my stuff into Sharpie, and I love that.
Yeah, he's a decisive guy, no doubt about that. You're right, no wishy-washy there. Well, we'll have to see. So far, I think the general consensus seems to be that there's been little damage, if any, done by the various witnesses that have been brought by the prosecution. And again, if you read the CNN or the Washington Compost or the New York Slime, they'll have a different opinion, But I think as I read, the actual quotes that are transcribed, I don't think much damage has been done. We'll see if Stormy does any damage. And, just because someone makes an allegation they had an intimate affair with Donald Trump doesn't make it so. Joe Biden says it makes it so. You have to listen to the woman. Unless a woman makes a complaint against him, then you don't listen to the woman. Remember that?
And again, having an affair, even though it's not great, it's not illegal. So hashing out the exact happenings should be interesting.
Yeah, when your wife's pregnant, oh my God, it's terrible. I hope he didn't do that. I don't think he did. Do you think he did?
I don't.
Do you care?
I don't care.
I do. I think character matters. I don't think it's a game changer. I don't think it's definitely a...
Does it change your opinion of Trump's character if this specific thing is true or not true? Like, given what you know about everything else?
Probably not.
Yeah,
no, probably
exactly.
Not.
Par for the course is kind of, what you might think with the Donald.
In news that affects yous, we've talked before about can Columbia stack a marijuana tax on top of Boone County and so forth. Well, a Missouri judge has now come down with a ruling on that kind of a proposition.
Yeah, this was in St. Louis, and the suit, it makes more sense where you're like right on the line and you've got a lot of these shops close together. So this was involving St. Louis City and St. Louis County, and it's kind of the first test of what a judge might do here. They do say they're going to appeal, but ultimately the judge said, you can stack the tax. So if the tax has been approved by the city and by the county and you happen to be in both, you get 6%, not just the 3%. And I think it's interesting in the context of the debate that we're currently having on initiative petition reform and initiative petitions in general, because I think what you heard a little bit was from some of the supporters of the measure and even the voters and the businesses. They said, well, we never intended for this to be the case. We always thought it would just be 3. We didn't want some to be 6 and some to be 3. And, it seems maybe a little bit inequitable, right? But why shouldn't both get their cut? I mean, there's good arguments on both sides, but say everyone agreed and said, you know what, that is really a bad outcome, Judge. We really do think that it should be 3 across the board. The legislature can't go in and fix that.
Nope.
Even if everyone agrees.
Nope.
It's in the Constitution.
That's right.
And so the only way to go back and fix this is fix, quote unquote, fix, even if people really wanted to, is to spend, upwards of $6 million or more to put it back on the ballot in a constitutional amendment.
That sounds like a vote for IP reform.
Well, and keep in mind, Stephanie, it barely passed. I mean, it failed in most counties in this state. It passed because of the big cities and stuff, but you're right. I do think it will end up at the Missouri Supreme Court potentially. But these people that are smoking marijuana, I drove by some of these shops on 420. They were lined up. I really, my gut feeling is these people are willing to pay 3-6%, but maybe I'm wrong. I think
sure they are.
They want their weed.
They crashed the system on 420.
Exactly. They just again, but if again details matter, and it wasn't written very well.
How many of them expect to have their student loans forgiven?
Well.
Hey, now.
This isn't about you. I'm not implying that, even though you enjoy your gummies. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, I think that's people's priorities are different these days, right? Your subscription to the streaming NBA or the football or the hockey or the whatever, the Paramount, that seems to take precedence of the weed over health care, over other costs that people bear.
Sometimes is healthcare, Randy, but zooming out from marijuana.
Weed is healthcare?
Can be.
Not recreational weed.
Sleep or with their pain. I think
also can make them apathetic and not show up for work.
Shown to help some people. Anyway, zooming out though, we haven't really talked that there was a fourth initiative petition turned in. Was it turned in Saturday or Sunday on the Ozarks Casino?
That I believe is turned in. Yeah, and that looks like it's
probably
going to.
What is that all about now? I thought
there's 13 licenses in the state of Missouri, and Jefferson City missed out on one because John knows that Jack West and basically the leaders of the Baptist churches in Jefferson City didn't want it coming in, so it went to Boonville. So they never were able to get one.
Changed the charter in Jefferson City, no less, to permanently ban gambling boats.
Jeff City will never see a gambling boat. This is really interesting in that they basically have written it in such a way, if it stands up to the legal test, and of course they'd have to get the license, putting it on the near the Bagnell Dam at the Lake of the Ozarks. It's been talked about before. Originally, I will tell you, the backers of gambling years and years ago said it would strictly be the Missouri and the Mississippi. So this is a change. I don't know how many voters will remember that, but that's what they did promise. But I tend to think if it's on the ballot, it has a good chance to pass.
It's a constitutional amendment, as are many of these, including the the abortion proposal. And I think as we're looking at this marijuana issue. And the court case there, there's a lot when things are poorly written or when there's a debate about the language, you risk getting an outcome that you don't like when you say, well, there's a question there. It's gray. It could be this way or this way. Well, funny story. If it's not clear and it goes to the courts and you get a bad outcome, like maybe people think this is, if it's in that Constitution, it's going to be very hard to clean up later.
That's exactly
this raises
right.
a similar issue. I'm looking at a letter signed by the superintendents of Columbia Public Schools, Hallsville, Southern Boone, Sturgeon, Harrisburg, Fayette, and North Callaway, urging the governor to veto the bill that basically enshrines a charter school. It's written such that it really defines Columbia as a place that charter schools can be introduced now.
And the other school districts in Boone County, too.
And there's some special things that I didn't realize that they allege is in the bill that makes it unconstitutional, like the same type of mechanical logistic things that apply to other charter schools don't apply because it's an accredited district. And the other charter schools, they say, it has to be in an unaccredited district or something.
I would like to point out what Boone County School District is missing from this letter, and that is Centralia.
That's right.
That's
thank
correct.
you.
Go Panthers.
But are we surprised that the establishment is out saying, charter schools are bad?
But I read this, and I don't know, as a layperson reading it, it sounds that's a pretty compelling argument.
Well, it's not a whole lot different than what Dr. Yearwood said at the Ready board meeting. They've taken a lot of his, for lack of a better term, talking points, and they've added a few things, but it's very similar. He obviously is involved in this. But I said on this show a couple weeks ago, I said I expect the education establishment and others, and Democrats including, to try to lobby the governor to veto this bill, and that is interesting. The constitutional thing is new about these other things in there.
The funding restrictions only apply. It's a carve-out funding provision for these schools, they allege, compared to others, and they say it requires our school districts in Boone County to absorb the entire funding impact of financial aid. I don't know. It's just an interesting argument. I'm anxious to see where it goes.
And Senator Rowden would disagree with that. But I want to make a point about something Stephanie said I think is absolutely right about the language of these initiative petitions, because very few people actually – I read them all. I read them all as a reporter but as a voter too, but I read them very closely. And most people don't. They probably, I'm going to assume, get their stuff from TV ads and things like that. But they're only getting a really small portion of what is in there. But one word can change the whole thing. And I'll never forget, Stephanie and I have talked about this, the Medicaid expansion bill. Forget whether you support or oppose Medicaid expansion. It passed. It passed because of about 6 counties. It failed in virtually all the other counties. But I'm going to tell you, folks, it did not have a funding mechanism in it. It did not. And
Trust me, I know. We went to court about it.
And you did. And you know what? You were correct. It did not. And the Supreme Court voted 7-0 that it was constitutional. And Chuck Hatfield came up with this. I thought it was crazy. I even said, I asked him 3 times, how are you saying this? He said they did fund it when they funded the Department of Social Services. And I got to give Chuck Hatfield a lot of credit. The Supreme Court bought that, but there was no funding mechanism in the ballot proposal. So not only is it important, but it also boils down to the courts. And courts, and what are they going to rule?
That was the cudgel that the opponents used, but it got defeated in the court.
And
it was unanimous.
The issue in that case was more about the Constitution says you cannot use the initiative process for appropriations, essentially. And so if there's no funding mechanism in it, then essentially you're appropriating money, existing money, if that makes sense. So that was the argument there. In the letter from the school districts, they're talking about whether or not it's a special law. And people who are around the legislature will have heard that a lot. And what you do know is that that's a tough argument. And I think the way that they've written it, I think it's open-ended enough that it would survive a look by the courts. A lot of times legislation is written about a pretty specific problem. If you recall, we just had this big landfill argument. There have been lots of different taxing districts and other things that apply to only a small set of counties, a small set of cities, a small area. And there are times when you cross that threshold of a special law, but it has been not very often.
And I would add just one thing. If the governor signs the bill, and I think there's a very good chance he will. He has not told me, but I know that Caleb Brown definitely is urging him to sign it. But if he does, clearly that letter indicates there will be a legal challenge, and that case will go right to Cole County Circuit Court, either to Daniel Patrick Green or to John Edward Beadham, one of those two.
And I think the bigger risk this session and what we saw, and you're going to have to remind me of the bill number last session, Brian, the court threw out, well, I guess it's from 2 sessions ago, for log rolling, the homeless and
the highway bill.
Struck down that whole bill and basically for
the Hammerschmidt provision.
For glomming too many things together.
Okay, we're getting in the weeds here. Hammerschmidt, what is that?
That's where you single subject. You can your bills have to deal with a single subject, and I think this is not. I don't think Hammerschmidt would apply to this because it's all education.
Not this one, but I'm just saying as we approach these last couple of weeks, the temptation is to just smash everything that you want into one big bill.
Omnibus.
And I think. I think the legislators would be smart to recall that the court, it hadn't done that in a long time, but has recently thrown out legislation. And so, you might risk some of your really prized legislation if you allow some of this end of the session antics.
And both parties add stuff. There's no doubt. Both they call it Christmas trees is what they call it.
We need to cover weather coming in, and we don't have much time. You want to let's cover it quickly now.
Very quickly. I'm going to just one quick thing. 500 Boone County area residents in Columbia now have power, so that is back power tomorrow.
on a dime. How can I put this? It just goes to show you that even old people can suck. Okay?
That's what a classic bite from Senator John Kennedy. Why isn't he on the short list for vice president?
He needs to pursue a career in stand-up comedy.
He should.
He's
Be
great.
the new weekend anchor on SNL.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, he's a refreshing, comedic pause from all of the mayhem that is our political cycle this year. John, what's on your leftover plate?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the Missouri Senate spent the grand total of 10 minutes at work yesterday and promptly adjourned after Bill Eigel started yelling that the leadership had yet again broken their word, and Cindy O'Loughlin was having none of it and whipped out the gavel and said, "See you later," and that was it after 10 minutes.
Yeah, and no doubt about it. And I think that she means business. She's going to get down to the business that they need to get done. Right by Friday, they have to have a budget or else we're going to special session, right?
Well, they'll reconvene here momentarily. That's the plan, so 9 a.m.
Any bets, Stephanie?
Oh, I need to go get the popcorn started. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Please do that.
Yeah.
I'm not
Extra
gonna,
butter, please.
Okay.
I'm not going to waste my time even tuning in today,
Yeah.
honestly. I think it's going to be a big nothing. Again, and I'm tired of hearing all of the yelling. Governor Parson and I are on the same plan. I love to get out of town the last week of session because it's just, I'm just don't want to be here for it. And so I'll be in DC a couple days next week, really due to a conference, but it's nice to kind of just be away from all of the drama and realize that sometimes we get in a little fishbowl and we're all like very tuned in, but most of the people are not paying as close attention as we are. But Parson is saying, you know what, now feels like a good time to get away too. He's headed to the border on Wednesday. Of course, we had the supplemental budget to add additional funds, and Parson said, I'm going to take another quick little trip. And I think that's probably a good idea. And he's getting, he's kind of been but the Freedom Caucus has said, you need to sign this. And if you notice, he did sign a bill, but didn't sign the one they wanted him to sign, which I think was kind of a stick in the eye. But
boss move.
Yeah.
He passed that Kansas City landfill. I mean,
yeah,
he signed
that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, that other bill sitting on his desk too, and he said, I'll sign a bill for you. Here you go.
Passive-aggressive trip to the border.
I don't know exactly, but I do think, saying like, I'm the governor, there's separate